Hi guys, this is Bernhard Geberger from TANGO Racing Simulator in Vienna. This time it's not racing. I decided to make a short video showing you guys my D-box settings. I had a comment asking for that. So I thought I will give you a glimpse of my settings. So when you have a D-box system installed, I'm using D-box Gen2 4250i 1.5 inch system. This is the smallest you can have from D-box. And for the dynamic movements, for the replicating a realistic car movement, as far as the dynamics is concerned, this is enough. If you want to have the vehicle banking and bigger movements like in rally or rallycross being replicated, then probably you would have to use a 3 or 6 inch setup, which is really expensive as far as D-box is concerned. I personally am very happy with my 4250 Gen 2 1.5 inch D-box setup. I think as far as hardware and software implementation goes, it's the best system, and the dynamic movements feels very realistic and in sync with what you see or expect coming from the simulation. So I have D-box Game Center. This is the software you have to run in the background in order to have the D-box system going. It's started automatically with the computer. I've heard that sometimes there are issues with updating. I didn't experience that. This works perfectly fine. You can update this list and D-box is checking if there is a new motion code available, and if so, it will show you there's a new version number than the installed one, and then you can reinstall or update a given motion code. As far as I'm concerned here on my system, this works perfectly fine. A little tricky sometimes can be how the D-box motion code is launched together with the title. In the case of iRacing and Flight Simulator, it's done automatically in the background. I just start iRacing or Flight Simulator and D-box is started in the background along with it. With some other titles you need to launch them manually, so you have to go there and launch the D-box together with the title. That can be tricky, especially with stuff like Assetto Corsa, for example, when you also use a third-party content manager or launcher and or additional software like SimWipe and SimExperience software, which you sometimes also have to launch manually. Then you have to launch the SimExperience software manually, D-box and the title itself, and sometimes this can get tricky. But in this video we focus on the settings on iRacing. So that's the latest motion code for iRacing 3.14.10978. It's a long number. And if you go on the settings here, then there's an additional window popping up. There are global parameters, and why I'm not that open with sharing setups, no matter if car setups or system setups, it's not because I want to hide them. It's just it's very it relates always to a given setup. So how you use the hardware, your kind of sim rig, how you use it, what's the purpose, should it be realistic or very impressive in movement, which cars you prefer, and your personal preferences. So this change a lot. So you cannot just use the same settings and experience to feel the same you would feel in my simulator here. But well, maybe it's still interesting for you. So you have the global parameters where you have overall settings. For iRacing I don't use much more than 88%. In most other titles I have this cranked up to 100. but in iRacing it seems to be stronger, and I'm fine with 88%. This is a little bit special in my case because before I used full motion sim, I did had the first 4 bass shakers installed and then 8 bass shakers installed, so that's a lot. And I kept them despite going full motion. So D-Box, one of the specialities of D-Box system is that they can also do vibration. But if you take a close look, the vibration D-Box can do is a little bit different than what bass shakers are doing. D-Box system is incredibly good with like really low frequency vibrations, like rumbling, like the engine of a truck. It's like this is it feels amazing. Whereas when it's high frequency, like in quotes, we are still talking very low frequencies, like bass shakers, so like 20 hertz, something like this, 40, 30, 40, 50 hertz, something like this. Bass shakers do something different than D-Box, and since I have 8 bass shakers installed on my sim rig, I basically don't use the vibration in the D-Box system at all. So that's the reason why I have normally this is at 0, and little values are changing quite dramatically. So if I change this to 33 down, it's basically a turned off. I don't exactly understand the consequences of this. It says if you reduce the motion part, it will enhance the vibration part, and if you improve the vibration part, it will improve. If you reduce the vibration part, it will improve the motion part. So what I do here is, instead of going to vibration or like pushing the vibration balance, I move it towards the motion part. So somewhere between 30 and 50 down to motion. So basically I let D-Box system focus on the motion only and get rid of the D-Box vibration option, because all what I want to feel in vibration is done by the bass shakers installed on the system. And I'm not using the vibration from D-Box. But this might be very different. If you don't use bass shakers, then probably you're going to use the vibration part of D-Box, so you would go with 0 or maybe even tweak it towards the vibration part. And then the details of the motion in iRacing. Normally I use a default setup, but sometimes I will change this according to a given car. For example, normally I change this if I run open wheeler like Formula 1 cars, and then everything is a little bit tweaked down, or like GT cars or rallycross cars. But these are my default settings. You can always reset by pressing this, and normally most of those values, they start at 40, so that's the original part. For general motion, I have cranked up the front rear quite a bit, so I changed from 40 to 48, enhancing the movement front to rear. But I dial down the front rear reactivity a lot, so that is normally 10, and I had it down to 2.8, which is a lot. So I reduced the reactivity. Why? Because at 10, if you run a lot of front rear acceleration, and I increased that because I wanted to have a focus on, if you brake, that it really, you feel that the car is diving in, like the nose is going down. But with the original settings, it was just not right enough for me. So I increased that. So when I brake, the car really like dives, and you feel that there's weight shifted in the front. But when the reactivity is standard, then when you shift gears, it's like really slamming you. The whole car is like, each time you shift a gear, it's like a huge kick. And to me, that was too much. So the solution for that, which I discussed with D-Box support, is to crank up the acceleration front rear, but to decrease the reactivity quite a lot. And for me, this works fine. But also this might be very different for your setup and preferences. I have a little increased the acceleration for left, right, and up, down. So from 40 to 44, just a little increase. Then that's probably the most interesting setting here, especially for iRacing. And also what I understood from the few videos I saw doing reviews of D-Box settings, the one I saw, they didn't really understand what this is about. I'm quite aware of what this is about because it was implemented on my feedback. I was discussing with D-Box support that I was unhappy with the way the motion was working when the absolute movement of the car changed a lot. For example, if you race Daytona and you have these banked walls, if you go from a level part of the track into the banked corner, the banked track, then obviously the car is like going a lot like from level to leaning to the left. If you go run left counterclockwise, left around the donor, for example, if you go on the bank corner, the car goes a lot to the left. But initially, what D-Box motion code did was replicate the dynamic movements. So when you go into a left-hand corner, the weight will transfer to the right, and the body roll will move the car to the right. And this is what happened. You went into the left-hand corner on Daytona. The track made like a banking to the left, but the car moved to the right. And exiting the bank corner, it was the other way around. So for me, the feeling was like really, really unrealistic because wrong. You go on this banked corner and the car goes tilts to the right instead of leaning over to the left. And asked if there's a way to implement or change that, and they looked into it and said, actually, as far as iRacing is concerned, it's possible because the telemetry is giving output of the absolute movement of the car. So in 2 weeks later, they rolled an update including this new setting, vehicle banking. And what that does is if you select this on top of the dynamic movements, so if you go into the left corner, the car will roll to the right. If you brake, it will dive to the front and so on. It is recognizing or implementing the absolute movement of the car. So if you go in like Nordschleife, if you go up a hill, the car will like pitch up and the nose will go up and the rear goes down, like you're driving up the hill. If you go down the hill, the other way around. If you go to carousel, the car is turning to the left a lot, the absolute movement of the car. And this is replicated by the vehicle banking settings. So if you want that, 40 is again standard, I think, yes. Then you can move how much absolute car body roll and body pitch you want to implement, and also how it will recenter again. So the issue is that you have limited available movement of the D-Box system. And on one hand, I personally, this is a matter of preference. If I go up a Hi Mark. Sorry, I have to finish this first.
No problem.
So if you go up a hill, I like to feel or get the idea that the car, the movement or the chassis of the car is moving the same when I go through carousel or in a banked corner, that the car is leaning to the left or to the right. This is when it's a problem with the smallest D-Box system with only 1.5 inch. This is like 3 centimeters, so the amount of the car travel or the way that the car is traveling or your motion system, your sim rig is traveling is very limited. It's perfectly fine for the dynamic movements, so for the suspension travel and braking, accelerating and gear change movements. But when it comes to these absolute body rolls and body pitch movements, it's actually not enough. So for that, to have this implemented in a better way, you would need a 3 or 6 inch system, and then you can use like 60-70% of the travel for these absolute movements. and then have still something left for the dynamic movements. Here on my side, since I have only the 1.5 system, inch system, it's a bit limited. So if you go in a Daytona, in the banked corner, in carousel, the car is going in real life, like, I don't really know about, like 15, 20 degrees banking. It cannot replicate this in the simulator with this little travel. And if you push this too high, so the absolute movement is replicated too much, then you will hit like the full travel of the system, and then there's nothing left for the dynamic travel anymore. That's also not good, because when you drive along, you feel like the bumps in the road, and if you brake or change the steering, you feel this body roll in the system, but only as long as there's still travel left. So if you crank these absolute body movements too much, and you go into the Daytona, and the whole system is shifting the whole to the left, then there is no room for dynamic setting anymore and dynamic movement anymore. So you have to find like something which works. You have to tweak around a little bit. And the vehicle banking recenter does, when you go into this, for example, Daytona, you go on the banked corner, the whole system shifts a little bit to the left, so you get the idea, the car is going, is leaning over. But then slowly it recenters to give you room to have more dynamic movement going on. So the whole system is not staying in the most left position, because then there's no room for dynamic movement anymore. So that's a little tricky, but if you get it right, I think it feels so much better than without it, because then you will, for me, you get just wrong feelings. Another thing which I think that people are misinterpreting is the yaw and surge movements. To my understanding, if you use a regular 4250 I system, so you have 4 actuators, you don't have these freedoms, these movements available for yaw and surge. So that's to be able to use this, you would have to implement 1 or 2 more actuators. So if you have only 4 on the corners of your sim rig, this doesn't make any difference if you use this or not, so I have it deactivated. I tried it if it's somehow simulated, even if you only have 4, but I couldn't feel anything changing. So in my opinion, it also says for 60 or if only, if you have 4, then this doesn't make anything. So also some reviews, they discuss this and show this, but using only 4 DOF, this doesn't work. So you can leave this off. I don't use engine vibration at all. As I said, I have 8 bass shakers installed, so I'm not using the vibration function from D-Box. Yes. I do have skid vibration activated, but dialed down a little bit. It doesn't really work very good for me. It's when you do feel that skid vibration is happening, you're already like somewhere in the grass, and then it doesn't make a big difference. Suspension more or less at the default setting. Surface texture default setting. I don't use crash dampening because I tried to use it, but I understood that if you don't get this setting right, you are limiting a lot of movements which are perfectly fine and not a crash at all. So, and I didn't have any problems actually when I crash. Well, I hardly crash, as Williams know, especially GTEs. Right? But anyway, I didn't have any big problems with crash motions, so I deactivate that, not to run in danger that I incidentally cut movement away. And a lot decreased gear shifts, as I said already, on my system at least. When I shift the gears, the movement for me is way too strong in the D-Box system. And I also have the bass shaker installed right to the chair. And when I get a gear shift, I feel a very strong and nice kick in the chair, which feels good to me, as well as throughout the rig due to the other bass shakers. So I use this very limited in the D-Box system. So those are my settings. Maybe it helps for some of you. You can comment if you use something completely different, or if this was helpful, or if you need to know anything else. And thanks for watching.
Should I look for a hosted session in GTE on Mount Panorama now?
To see if we are going to crash something. Stop crashing my deep box settings video.